We'll call to order this meeting. Thank you. All right, can you hear me now? Oh, okay. I'm new at this, sorry. We'll call this meeting to order at 6:02 now. And we adopt the agenda?
Yep.
Oh,
So move.
so moved, okay. Review and discuss the school articles is number 3. And the first one on that is warning the Athens Grafton School District. You'll find that in your list book on page 56. If anybody has any questions, we'd appreciate if you would stand and state your name and then your question.
I think, why don't we move on to the presentation that we have on the screen? We'll have on the screen.
What's, oh. Thank you.
We can review the articles at the end of a discussion that I have prepared here. I'm going to try to explain to people what makes up the homestead tax rate and how that is developed. But there's many parts that go into this. The first part is the school budget for Athens and Grafton, and then also the Bellows Falls High School budget. Both of those get melded together at a later date. We'll discuss that point. The second thing that happens is there's revenue that the school districts have. And Grafton has some revenue, which will help to reduce the school budget. We'll see that a little bit later. The big thing that determines what the per pupil school spending is the long-term weighted ADM, which is actually the long-term weighted average daily membership that appears and is selected as computed by the state, which is inputted data from the Bellows Falls WNUSUD business office, and then there are various categories that go into coming up with the final number, which I have a schedule on, we'll discuss in a minute. The next item is the yield, which is determined by the legislature. And this is basically a balancing feature that they have to make the education fund come out even with revenue and with expense. And so they develop a yield factor to make this happen. And that has an impact on our budgets. The next item that comes up is the blending of the district and the Bellows Falls school budgets or school rates, and then the CLA. So if we can go to the first schedule, we can discuss what's in really the first article that we would like the voters to approve, which is the school budget. The school budget this year totals in 26-27, $1,676,464. I think you can see that on the screen, and some of you may have that in a handout. This is compares actually to the 24-25 actual expense, which was $1,685,924. So we're actually versus 24-25 actual. We have come up with a budget which is $9,460 less than what we spent in 24-25. Now, what makes up that budget? Education expense is $669,915. Now, what makes that up? We have mostly in there your teachers, your salary expense, and your benefit expense. We have in that number 4 full-time teachers, 1 physical ed and restorative practices teacher. We have 4/10 of a music teacher and 0.2% of a art teacher. That totals 5.6 people. We also have a guidance teacher of 0.4. So they're basically, that's a 2-day person. You have health services, a nurse, about 0.2. And you have a librarian, 0.2. That's what makes up the manpower that is in the district budget. Any questions on that? The Board of Education spending is estimated to be $25,070. Most of that is the audit and also the insurance, which we get charged, which is developed by the business office. The office of the principal is $212,381. And this is essentially two people, a full-time principal and our administrative person, which assists the principal. The operation of the buildings is $136,665, and you can see that's $35,165 down from what we spent in 24-25. The main reason for that is we do not have a full-time custodian anymore. We did back at that point in time. So that's another savings reduction that we have taken. Yeah. Tuition expense this coming year is $209,812, which is $35,856 favorable to the prior year. And this is mainly because we have fewer students that are going to be tuitioned. We only have 10 students that are being tuitioned next year in grades 7 and 8. The one item that is up quite significantly is our WNECU assessments. Now, this assessments are for transportation expense, food expense, pre-K expense, and most largely special education. So our total assessment is up by $56,759, which is something we don't have a control of, as this is basically determined out of the WNESU budget and is allocated based on the long-term weighted pupils that are in each school district, of which we're one school district in the supervisory union. So our total budget is actually down by about 0.56%. Now, the second thing that has a mitigating factor on the amount of the budget is surplus. So we have a surplus that we are proposing to put into this school year of $337,630. $187,630 of that was voted by the voters last year to reduce expenses in this budget year, 26-27. We're also recommending that 150,000 more, which is another warning that is in our warning, that we hope the voters will approve for the coming year to factor into what the ultimate homestead tax rate will be, which we'll see as we move through the presentation. The second item for budgets is the Bellows Falls High School budget. I'm not going to comment too much on this other than to say that the budget expense, which is the next schedule, is up in the high school by $655,537. Their revenue is also their surplus that they're putting against that is $259,352, which will reduce the education spending to $8,933,069. But the key thing here is the long-term weighted ADM. Last in 25-26, it was 653.77 students, and now it's 688.68, which is up 34.91 students. So when you divide that into the education spending, you now come up with a spending per pupil of $12,971.29, which is only up $248.74 over the prior year, which that budget was approved and is quite reasonable. We can go to the next schedule. This is a review of the long-term weighted ADM calculation, which I mentioned a few minutes ago. These are the components that make up the calculation. There's a 2-year average ADM and special services, special people. I'm not sure exactly what the SPS is, except there are none in our district. I did discover that. So the 2-year average of pupils, now these are real people, was 5661 in 24-25, was 51.03 in 25-26, and it's 46.73 in 26-27. So it's down by 9.88 pupils. Now, what goes into this is your kids from pre-K up through the 8th grade. The next item is grade weight. So the state has said that based on people that are students that are in certain grades, you get a certain extra pupil cost or person. So for that, we get 3.09 in this coming year, and you can see that it was 3.18 and 2.86 in the other 2 years. They also give you more pupils if they're economically disadvantaged. And you can see there, we get 37 more pupils there in 24-25, 27.66, and now it's 26.42. So obviously, as your real pupils go down, these other factors are also going to go down. The sparsity weight, which is another thing that the state has for giving you more pupils, that depends on the number of people that you have in your town. And they calculate that by some formula, which I do not know. All I can tell you is that's the number that the state has come up with. There's also a small school weight. So if you have few students, they also give you more pupils because they know it costs more to educate fewer pupils than it does large pupils. So you can see that the ADM for this year is 98.69. So that is divided into our net budget expense to come up with our cost per pupil, which we'll see in another schedule. But I also want to show the next schedule, which is the headcount schedule. This is what the headcount looks like for our school district. In 24-25, we had a total of 45 kids. 14 of them were in the 7th and 8th grade. And that's why the tuition was higher that year than it was this coming year. We had 31 in the K through 6. In 25-26, which is right now, we have 28 students, and you can see what we have by grade, and we have 10 that are in the 7th and 8th grade. Next year, we also will have 10 in the 7th and 8th grade, and we will have 26 students projected in K through 6 for a total of 36, and in the following year, 34. So what's happening here is the long-term weighted ADM average is going to keep going down. That's not good for the town or the district or for both. So what does this yield? It yields an education spending per pupil in 24-25 of $12,770.11. From 25-26, it's $13,146.22, which was up $376.11. And in 26-27, it's projected to be $13,566.06, or up $419.84, which is a 6.2% increase in our education spending per pupil over 3 years. Now, this is still very much below the excess spending threshold that the state has identified for next year, which is $16,470 per pupil. If you go over that $16,470, you get added dollar for dollar to that education spending per pupil cost. Fortunately, we're not there. Obviously, we're significantly down below that. And the main reason is because of our surpluses. We go to the next schedule. This schedule calculates your Athens Grafton District homestead tax rate. So you can see the first item is the expenditures. You have $1,632,408 and 26. And this year, the budget, which we want people to approve, we've gone through that budget. It's pretty frugal. Is $1,676,464. Offsetting revenues, again, this is the surpluses. In 26, it's $250,083. And we're asking for next year, we have the 187 already there, but we need another 150, we believe, to come up with a tax rate which will be acceptable to the voters of both Athens and Grafton. You then take the net education spending, which is for next year, $1,338,834, and you divide that by the long-term weighted ADM, which is again, is 98.69 next year. Again, it's down from the 105.15 the prior year. So you can see that what that 98.69 yields with a spending level, which is less than what it was the year before, is a education rate of 13,566.06, which is slightly up. So about $449 from what it was the year before. $419, excuse me. So that number is then divided by the yield to come up with the equalized homestead tax rate for the district. And the yield is again set by the state, and today that yield is $8,849, which yields a estimated tax rate next year of 1.5331 for the district, which is up versus 1.5293 this year. And the statewide average is anticipated to be $1.67. Now, I think this number will actually be better as the year goes on, because the education fund, the governor has requested the legislature to accept possibly, hopefully, a $75 million donation from the general fund, which will help the education fund. And he even has got as high as wanting 125 million. So if the legislature takes up the governor on this, and he's going to take up some, I don't know how much, but there will be some, it will have a favorable impact on this $8,849 number. In fact, it'll raise it some, which means it's going to have a favorable impact on the tax rate. Does everybody understand that? So the other key thing that the district has is a surplus. So that's the right-hand column of this schedule. We had a general fund surplus of $732,274 as of June 30th of the past year. We're using $250,083 of that in this year to reduce and help this year's budget, which is the year we're in presently right now. We're saying we know we're going to use 187,630, and by a warning, we want to use another 150,000 of that this year to help reduce the equalized homestead rate to $1.53.31731. So that leaves us with an unrestricted fund balance left for future years of $144,561. But we also have a tuition reserve of $85,000. We also have a warning in here, and we're asking the voters to take that $85,000 and move that into a fund for future years' tax relief. So that's another warning. And that would give us a fund balance of $229,561. Now, we're also in the year, and it looks like this year, we're going to be favorable to budget again to some extent. Part of that is related to the fact that we're generating interest income because of all the cash that we have from the surpluses. So we're generating some interest income, which was not in the budget. And we're also have two tuition students at $15,000 because we have two kids that have come, I believe it's from Londonderry, and are in our school district here, and they're paying us $15,000 to come to our schools. So that's another $30,000 that we hadn't anticipated. And then we had a budget for the nurse, a full-time nurse, and we decided during the year not to fill that position. And so we've just been using, I think Angela could talk to this more, but we just have a part-time person filling the nurse's spot. We also had a full-time kindergarten person in there, and we did not fill that position until just recently. So that is also generating some favorable benefit to our district this year. So in total, I'm looking at, we'll probably have a surplus by the end of the coming year of about $379,561, which would be available for future tax relief. Now, we also have one other surplus, which is $101,000 plus, roughly, related to fixing the building. In other words, repairs and maintenance to the building here for significant repairs. So that's would mitigate any future expenses that might pop up, like a blown furnace or something like that, would be charged against that rather against the regular budget. So that's where we are there. Now, if we go to the next schedule, get it. This is the estimated tax rate for Athens for next year, homestead tax rate. And what it does, it melds the Athens Grafton budget and the BF high school budget to come up with what the homestead tax rate would be. Expenditure wise, again, you can see the numbers that we've been talking about. For Athens and Grafton is $1,676,464 less the revenue, comes up with your net education spending divided by the long-term ADM, comes up with a net education spending of $13,566. You divide it by the homestead yield and you get to that 1.5331 number for the district. If you look at the high school, you go down through the same calculation and the same yield, and you come up with a homestead tax rate for them of $1.4658. Now, these two rates get melded together to come up with one rate for the town, and this is for the Athens town. In Athens, the total students that Athens has, 56.17%, according to the state, of the students that they have from Athens are in the Grafton school, and 43.83% of their students are in the high school. So you multiply those percentages times the homestead tax rates for the districts of Athens, Grafton, and Bellows Falls Union High School, and you come up with a combined tax rate of $1.5036. Now, the one kicker is the CLA. The state says that you have to pay your taxes based on 100% of the assessed value of your property. Now, the town, especially Grafton and Athens, are not at 100% of the assessed value for their property in the town. The CLA is calculated, and what that is a 3-year average of the ballot sales in a town divided by the sales price divided by the assessed value. And the state comes up with a percentage factor to tell you how much below fair market value or above fair market value you are. The state then has said that all of these numbers that we have been talking about are calculated to start with at an average CLA of 72%, which is what the average CLA is for the whole state today. So then they say, based on your CLA, which in Grafton is 64.5%, which is below the 72%. So then they divide the two numbers to come up with a factor to get you to 100%. And that factor for Athens is 0.97%. So you divide the 97% into the 1.5036, and you come up with a tax rate of $1.55.01, or a 5.35 cent increase, which is 3.57% for the Athens. Now, again, if the yield goes up, the chances are that this percent will come down to maybe almost nothing. But that is not a given, and it won't happen until May, when the legislature actually comes up with a yield bill to balance their education fund. Grafton, we have the same calculation, getting down to the homestead tax rates, which are again 1.5331 for the Athens Grafton School and 1.4658 for the Bellows Falls Union High School. Grafton, on the other hand, has 71.22% of their kids are in the Grafton Athens School, and only 28.78% of their total students are in the high school. So you multiply those two numbers, and obviously Grafton, because the homestead tax rate for Athens Grafton is higher, we get a little bit more of the Grafton Athens tax rate versus the high school. So our combined rate comes out to $1.51.37 divided by the CLA factor again, which is 94%. And you come up with a 161.03 divided by $1.51.98 for the present year. We're up 9 cents, which is 5.96%. Now, the kicker for Grafton is that we're in a reappraisal year as well. So that rate is actually going to be at the end probably 40% less, maybe even 35 to 45% based on our real CLA, which is 64.5% today. So that percentage again is going to come down if the yield goes up. Now, that's quite a long. So the main thing is, most of the things that I've discussed here are in the warning. We're asking that people, approve the budget and approve the articles related to the surplus, which will give us future tax relief. Now, I guess we'll open it up for questions. Please speak if you have questions about. Come on.
Yes, what is the cost per student again, Grafton Elementary, and how do you?
Get on that microphone.
That breakdown?
So your question is, what is the cost per student?
Right.
And what was the second part?
How is the breakdown factored?
How is the breakdown factor?
The long-term weighted ADM.
The long-term weighted ADM.
I want the real breakdown.
Do you have this page, sir, that was up front? Oh, okay.
More copy.
Okay, here, you can have one. So for 2025, 2026, The number. And then for 2026, 2027, drop.
Okay, how are you getting at 13,000 per student? When, if you divide the number of students by 1.6 million, it's over 40,000 per student. What is the real cost per student?
That's because the state says the long-term weighted average daily membership is 98, not 28. Because it costs more to educate students in a small school.
Yeah, but how much are we as the taxpayers paying? Are we paying 40,000 per student, or are we paying 13,000 per student?
If you talk real people, you know, like 30 people, obviously you're costing more.
Yes, I mean, if I talk to Andy privately, he tells me 40,000, but you're telling the voters today it's 15,000. So I want the real number.
But the real number is what I'm telling you. What the 30,000 is not a real number. It's,
It's the real number in my.
the state says it's not a real number, what I'm telling you.
Just so we're clear, there's also, it's not just the students that are in this building, you also have the high school students.
Yeah, but that's not a negligible difference.
No, but I just wanted to,
It's just the students in this building, it's over $60,000 per student.
No, it isn't.
You can divide the number of students that go to the school.
There's $250,000 in that 1.6 number that's for 7th and 8th graders. Tuition.
Okay, and so that takes it to still about 40,000.
Yes. If you divide it, simple math, you're right. Simple math, you're right, but the state says, because they give us the additional pupils, which they do to every school in this state. This isn't unique to Grafton. This is what happens for every school in this state.
So, I mean, my real question is, when is the school closing? Under Act 73, you have to maintain a 12 student cap. The school's nowhere near that. You're supposed to make a decision within 2 years of Act 73 passing, and all I'm hearing about is just kicking the can down the curb.
That's a point. But we don't know what's gonna happen with Act 73. I don't know whether you wanna comment to that.
I mean, a little bit that, so Act 73, the first part about it is minimum class size averages. And so, kindergarten has no minimum class size average. First grade has, 10 students, and then after that it's 12, and then when you get into middle school, it goes up to 15. And if a school does not meet minimum class size average, which will be, we will have to report in the spring of next year, what our numbers are. We then have to ask for a waiver. And it's 3 years, if 3 continuous years, you do not meet minimum class size average, then there's a series of things that the Secretary of State can do. So anywhere from put us on technical assistance up to making a recommendation to close the school. So it's a determination that would be 3 years out. Because based on the numbers and our projections, we will not be meeting class size average, minimum class size average.
Correct, the clarification. Class size average, is that students in a classroom or third grade class, fourth grade class, fifth grade class?
So you can combine 2 classes. So you can combine like grades 3 and 4, 5, 6, and then you have to get to that minimum class size average. So even with combinations, we won't make it for this building.
Add to that. And then to add to that, there's currently a lot of stuff that's going on with the legislature right now in terms of not only what the school district should be, because I'm sure that you folks saw the map that came out that would originally have our school district from Vernon all the way up to White River. And so they've been working on that as well as other things to put in, such as whether the town would get a vote on whether to close the schools. So even though an act was passed last year, there's still a lot that's up in the air as they're hammering it out. Seems like they passed something and then they're working out the ramifications later. And in terms of cost savings, if you follow the Rural School Community Alliance, which is focusing on rural schools throughout the state, there's no data that they've been able to point to that shows the long-term cost savings through school mergers. Because where you close schools and pick up savings costs on one end, you're then also picking up costs on the other end. And the things that are driving this cost per pupil include things such as healthcare, which are required as part of collective bargaining agreements. And certain students who require a one-on-one paraeducator or something like that, even if the schools get combined, those students who are legally entitled to their IEPs to have extra help, they're not gonna be losing those staff members. And then you also pick up costs in other places, such as in, transportation costs, having to put in extra buildings to be able to hold our sizes, because where would all the kids in Grafton go that can hold that? So, just wanted to flag that as we talk about cost, it's something to keep in mind, that's still very much up in the air and it's undecided.
Did the governor change what he said about that he would veto any budget that changes Act 73? Because that's what Bill Scott said on the record.
I'm not sure about him vetoing anything about that, I just know that there's active organization going on within that legislature, especially by the Rural School Community Alliance, we put out a lot of good information online regarding things that need to happen, because there's a number of schools that will be, just simply unable to meet the minimum class size standard. I graduated from here in 2006 and my class had 6 kids, so it's obviously our enrollment's gone down. But those class sizes don't take into account places like Grafton, where you can't just combine with Chester and send a school bus over that mountain in the middle of the winter. So.
Yes.
I think what we need to do is not just wait for the state to close the school. And I agree with him. I just looked at the number, there's 6 students in high school, 10 in middle school, and 28 here. There'll be less next year, but that's what it is now. That's 44 students in Dutton, 1.6 million. I understand that all those things have to be used to make sure that we don't go to give our real costs, and we don't go above the maximum per student. But we have $40,000 per student, which can't, I mean, I don't know how I'm gonna vote for it, but I will vote for it on this condition. That you, with the parents that have children in the school right now, come up with a committee to study during this next year, how we're gonna close the year, the school. Not this June, but next June, and how we're gonna get that done. If that can't be done, I'm gonna vote no on this. I mean, it's ridiculous, $40,000 a student. Let me just say this, let me just say a little bit more. We're finding out, if you read articles every day, including Harvard University, where the children are getting there without being able to read, write, or do math. Yet, they have straight A's in high school. They're going to college and they can't do 7th grade math. We need to fix the school system. I don't know how. One of the other things that all of us need to do is call Governor Scott and get the voucher system going. Because without competition, our schools are going to remain exactly as they are, which are really lacking. Which, 70% of the students leave this school can't do math. And over 60% of the kids leaving this school board can't read or write. That's ridiculous. I don't even know why we call it a school. It's a daycare center. But I would like to see a committee to work on it, on the closing, whenever that is. Or, I'm gonna vote no, I mean, there's no way you can vote for $20,000 for kids. Thank you.
Right here.
So, 26 kids next year,
Yep, I believe that's the number.
how many kids, that should be going to Grafton, are not going to Grafton? You know that?
Are you asking about homesteading?
Any of those. How many kids that would normally go to Grafton Elementary School, eligible to go
I think the answer is that numbers.
and not showing up here?
He's good.
So currently, there are 13 students who are, on homesteading. So that home study is how the state defines homeschool, so that's home study.
So all the 13 kids are homeschooled, is what you're saying?
Between the two towns, there are 13 students, yes. And some of those are families that have made that choice, over years. We can go back and look at it and we can see that it's the same family. In the last 4 years, it's been 10, 11, and 13.
Is anybody else choosing other schools?
You can't choose it, you can only. So like the students who are coming in here that are being tuitioned from Londonderry, those families are purposely choosing to pay. Because a student cannot come from another school district that offers a K-6 school. So you can't just choose to go, there's not free school choice, you have school choice for grades 7 and 8 only.
Talking about private.
Yeah, like the kids going.
Do we have those figures? Because 13 homeschool kids sounds like a lot.
But they pulled it.
Yeah, and Nicole, these numbers that I have are just home study, correct? Correct, I'd have to get that, I don't have that in front of me, sorry.
It might be worthwhile to do some investigatory work
We
on
can,
why kids are eligible to go here, but are not.
We have.
Yeah, we often look at that and as a family that's making that choice, a lot of times it's personal choice, of what, why they're making those decisions not to attend public school.
Right. Thank you. Oh, I also heard a figure the other day that 70% of the kids here are at grade level, is that true?
70,
70% of the students here are performing at grade level?
Angie, do you?
Would you please repeat the
So
question?
the question is, that he had heard that 70% of our students are at proficient or better.
Was that published somewhere?
I don't know where I heard it, but I heard that 7%, I think it was at a board meeting.
It's the opposite. It's the opposite. 70% can't read or write.
It's just to me, when they're asking for people to vote on a budget and you don't have figures on, why are kids that are eligible to be here not being here? And trying to make the argument that, hey, come here. We have a ridiculous staff to student ratio, yet for some reason, a little over 2/3 of the students don't seem to be at grade level. I'm with this gentleman. There comes a time when it costs more to get the truck to pass inspection than to just buy a new truck.
So I just want to remind everyone that the only body that has the power to close a school is the electorate. So I do not have the ability or the power to close a school. The school board can only close a school in an emergency. So that would be like if all of a sudden we didn't have, a principal and a couple other key personnel. So they would have to deem that as an emergency and they can only close it for the remainder of that year. So like that happened in Wyndham. So when they made that decision, but the only body currently that can close a school is the electorate. And so that would have to be an article that you vote on.
I think I would add too, that if the budget is not passed, the school does not close. We just do another budget. If that budget doesn't pass, then the state will do the budget for the school itself. So the school does not close. As Andy has just said, the only people that can close the school are you people out there.
I just want to correct myself also, when I said 13, that includes students who attend the middle school and the high school. So that's all of the students of Athens and Grafton. So not just the elementary school. There are students who are who could go to the middle school or could go to the high school, and those families are choosing home study as well. So,
And I just wanna, add something else about those numbers. I'm Googling them and they're not coming up with that, so I'm happy to look into it. I think something that's important to keep in mind is the unique population that our school also serves. For one thing, though, I do think that I'm an example of a great education here. I graduated here in 2006 and ended up becoming a lawyer at one of the largest law firms in the world before moving back, and I credit my education here immensely for my success, especially after using school choice to go to Leland and Gray and seeing how I matched up against other kids. That said, about 40% of our kids are in IUPs, which are individual education plans. Those are naturally more expensive and cater students that have unique needs that a regular classroom experience cannot meet. Athens is also one of the poorest towns in the state. I just pulled it up with a poverty rate of over 30%. So you are serving students that come in to kindergarten at a different level and continue to have unique educational challenges throughout their entire time here. So it's important that when we're comparing the data of our schools, that we're comparing them against comparable data and not out of students that come into kindergarten with a significant advantage that unfortunately a number of our kiddos don't have.
Thank you. So you truly are a remarkable example of the product of this school system, Krista. I have a question that is related to what Krista said and also the previous two questioners.
Here.
And,
Suze.
so I understand that, oh my, okay. Thanks, thank you very much. So I understand that in the proposed GES budget, there are 4 full-time teachers. Is that right?
Yes.
And so my question is, would you share the actual student-teacher ratio? And would you also share with us how our school is trending in the math and reading proficiency scores?
You want Angela to do that or?
yeah, it's Angela.
So do you want the exact numbers?
Yeah, do you have them, Andy?
So for next year, there will be 5 kindergartners.
5 kindergartners, and there will be a kindergarten teacher, so a 5-to-1 ratio in kindergarten.
This year it's K-2, but we're required to, we can't combine more than 2 grade levels, so we had to hire our kindergarten teacher. That's, like, we have to have 4 classes of teachers, there's no way around it. So next year, 5 kindergartens, 4 first graders, 4 second graders, 6 third graders, 3 fourth graders, 2 fifth graders, and 4 sixth graders. That's a total of 28, so 28 divided by 4.
You said it's what, 28 divided by 4, so that's a 7-to-1 ratio. The second part of your question is how are we trending? So,
Year over year, down, up?
yep, so the state actually just released what they call the snapshot. So if you go on and look at Vermont snapshot, you can go in, you can put in any school and pull it up. It just came out 2 days ago, literally. And so our numbers are small, so it makes it hard. They don't always give out all the information. But we are, as far as English language and math, our students are approaching. So that's how they call it, not meeting, approaching, meeting, or exceeding. So our kids are in the approaching, and that's been pretty steady across the SU. We are starting to see trends of students going up, especially in mathematics. And that's reflected in this. And the reading is still coming along.
Hey, folks, I don't think you can see, but Mary Beth Goldner had an advantage for a while.
I didn't know I could do that.
Well, I just wanted to give some historical perspective to the elementary school. When we moved here, the numbers were very, very similar, and I was new, and these people approached me because they wanted to talk about the school, and I went to this meeting, and it was all about closing our school and how to turn it into something else, and I was heartbroken moving in here to hear that discussion. But the numbers were just like they are. And as a community, that's when we decided to merge with Athens, because we knew 20 kids, we can't justify that. 30 got us in a ballpark. And this community rallied around the town, like the schools, and instead of closing it, they even made the best schools in the area, push the road and a lot of our kids, folks were sitting here, our kids rode that wave where after the town rallied around it and said, no. Yes, we can close it and say it's not worth it. Or we can rally around it and figure out, okay, then how do we make it a better school? How do we make it a school that the other communities want to come to? And they did, and we now have the types of efficient kids that are coming in. So I think we can either, go double drums and give up and figure out how to close it tomorrow. Or as Krista said, maybe we reach out to the rural schools, because the rural schools are important. Without a little school here in this community, I don't know if this community would be a community then. People don't look in, there's not the school. People, the guests love hearing the kids play on the playground. It brings people in, it's not just a photo op community, but it's a real community. And I think it's important to remember that again, back when I moved here, these were the numbers. And before I left the school, we were like, oh my God, they need to buy another building. There are too many kids to fit in this building, and that was a very real issue as well. And you can't predict out any more than 5 years because the kids aren't ready. So I just wanted to give some historical perspective.
Yes.
This is Bill. I agree with Mary Beth. I don't want to see this school closed. The state already stole the school from us by sending all the funding to Montpelier. That's why, one of the reasons we have a problem. I'd like to see this school improve and be a real magnet for all the different towns and so on to have a really good school. I agree with her. The other point I wanted to make is I completely disagree that economics has anything to do with education. Poor kids can learn as fast and as easy as rich kids, provided that in the classroom, they're all treated the same. And I don't know why we all look at economics. Economics has nothing to do with it. If economics had something to do with Mississippi wouldn't be improving as fast as it did. It's improving because they have good schools now. That's the point. Discipline in the schools, kids sitting down and learning. That's what's important. Not the economic classes.
Yeah, my number one classroom.
Yes, I taught in the class. I've been in the classroom with poor kids and rich. It has nothing to do with poverty. Nothing to do with poverty. That's below.
I do not believe we've been in the classroom any one time.
We're getting carried away here.
Yes.
A question I asked before, the four teaching staff. Did I hear that right, that the gym teacher / counselor was not combined with that, making it a total of 5? So 4 includes just,
It's a full.
so 4 class.
There's more that are full-time, and then there's the other teachers and staff that teach specialty subjects such as art, music, guidance.
Okay, so I think that it's worthwhile to mention those extra people because they all play a part in what the student's gonna get. And it improves, it's not like nobody's here other than those 4 people, when you consider a staff to student ratio. They're all here. They're all contributing.
Not for the full time. They're here for a day, maybe.
What I was asking was, when we were talking about the lump sum for the.
Well, the four.
That's what, that's my question.
The librarian isn't being the whole time.
But the gym teacher is.
Well, the gym teacher is, yeah.
That's, I think, the
Angela,
Your microphone lit.
Angela,
Yeah.
well, thank you.
Have one.
So we have, the 0.4, that was our counselor and our PE teacher who also does some counseling. They are not here whole days, correct? Is it 0.4?
No, but I hear the question is, if you combine those, like how many FTEs are there, so.
I think it's a question of ratio to classroom teachers versus ratio to staff.
Yeah.
Does any,
Angela, do you have those numbers?
I would have to do the math right now, and I'm happy to, but can you come back?
Sure.
Okay.
one thing I'd like to, have people think about is if we close the school, where do our kids go to school? And, how far do we want to bus them? And like, one of the things that really bothers me with the, mapping that they're doing is the weather. This is not,
No, you're fine. Just Kristen. No. Sorry.
yeah, is the weather can be so different between communities. And if we bus from this community to who knows what other community, are we putting our kids into danger, putting them on roads that are not safe, or vice versa? So we need to be very thoughtful as to the geography that we live in. And how do we want to transport our children? Because my kids had to go to Bellows Falls for middle school and high school, and that scared me to death. Because that road going to Saxon's River in the winter could be pretty treacherous. And that's not going up and over the ridges.
How many students ride this transportation buses now?
Pardon?
How many students are on our bus now? And here we've got like maybe 3, you know?
It varies, a lot. I mean, so I don't have the actual number off the top of my head, but like the morning run could, it depends on if a parent wants, needs transportation or not. Sometimes, we have kids who ride intermittently, like on a Tuesday, Thursday kind of thing, and then the afternoon run can be higher or lower. So it's sparse. I'm not gonna sugarcoat that, but we're not filling a full bus, but we do have to run 2 buses out here just because of the directions.
I can say 12 kids drove the bus home on Friday.
Michelle?
I actually want to circle back around and start directly address the poverty issue, rich kids versus poor kids, because I actually have direct experience with this. A lot of you know me as a librarian in town. I was a school teacher for a number of years. But what you might not know is that I grew up in the Adirondacks in extreme poverty. I lived for a number of years in a mobile home that didn't have hot running water with a violent, abusive parent. I'm smart. I'm really quite smart. School was a sanctuary for me. I wanted to go to school and I wanted to be there. I don't think my education was necessarily stellar, but it was decent and I had education. I had access to books. I had access to the textbooks. I had access to whatever they were able to give me. And I went and I paid attention. But I was in school and I knew a lot of people who were in the same situation or worse than me, who maybe didn't have the same level of ability to learn. I'm not gonna say intelligence, because my brain is a sort of an education brain. But some people don't have education brains, or they might have, they didn't have IEPs back then, but they might have been what we call special ed back then. So they didn't have the same ability. So when you're looking at kids in poverty, they may be coming to school without food, with a violent situation at home, with parents who are moving from place to place because they don't have enough money to pay for housing. All sorts of challenges, and they may also have learning issues and other things going on. And I just heard you say that 40% of the kids have an IEP in the Grafton Elementary School. That's not when the teachers work with those kids, that's a tremendous amount of work that they need to put in, and those kids are putting in a tremendous amount of work to get from here to somewhere else. I don't consider a school a failing school just based upon test grades. I consider a school to be doing an exemplary job. If they could take a child from here and bring them on a little bit further. That may not look like a child who's ever going to go to college. But those kids have to go somewhere. So if you close the school and you don't support them, you're kicking the can down the road. Eventually, those people, you're gonna be trying to employ them. They're gonna be in your community. You're gonna have to take care of them one way or another. So you might as well take care of them while they're in school when you can actually make a difference.
I just wanted to clarify my comment when I mentioned the poverty level. That wasn't to say that kids from a lower income background can't learn. There's something called the 30 million word gap. Children that grow up in the lowest levels of poverty, such as what you sometimes see in our community, hear 30 million fewer words by the time that they enter kindergarten than children from other families that may read to them at night or have access to higher resources. So it's not the kid's ability, it's what teachers have as a starting point that they then have to work with, which is just different in different communities based upon the access to resources that those kids have.
Yeah, I have the number of the total staff. So the total staff out here, including a part-time custodian, is 8.78. And then there is a special educator that is, comes from the SU, so that's actually, there's 9.78 adults in the building. They aren't in the building, as I think some people pointed out, some of those are part-time itinerant, so they're not here every single day. But just to give you that number, so.
Mary Beth, I don't have that. Mary Beth?
I just wanted to give another historical perspective. When we were in school, in almost every case, those special ed kids weren't in class with us.
Nope.
They were in self-contained classrooms. You saw them in the hallway sometimes, but they weren't in your classroom. The teacher didn't have to teach the higher end academically oriented kids and those special ed kids. They weren't in our classroom stuff. Now they are, the teachers gotta reach that full, huge range of kids.
Andy, does your 9.78 include the paras?
Yeah, we got a pair.
It doesn't include like any special ed paras. It didn't include, related service folks, because I just don't know the rotation, and that changes on a case by case basis based on what a student's service. So the question was about paraprofessionals. Typically, those are, come from a service that is that's called for in a student's IEP. So it might be they're in a group para, in a small group setting, or it might be a one-on-one, and that can vary month to month almost based on a student's IEP. So I was looking at just what we have budgeted for the current budget we're asking you to vote on, and then I also know that we have a special educator out here.
Just gonna look at money. I love this school. I don't wanna see it close, but I know, you look at the budgets, you look at the figures, you look at the people in the building that are working with the kids. Our teachers here, the paras, the special educators, they give their all to these kids. And if you come into the school or if you get Angela's bulletin each week, you can see the pictures, you can see what they're doing. The resources we have here in Grafton. We have the library, we have the Nature Museum, we've got the Grafton Trails, we've got the Grafton Foundation, we got the Historical Society. These kids take hold of that. Part of their curriculum, the outdoor gardens that we have here, in the Outdoor Life and the Nature Museum. They grab a hold of that, and part of the curriculum is based on that. I've had the pleasure, after I retired from my teaching role, for subbing for 7 or 8 years here. I loved it. So I know a lot happens here. The percentage of special education kids here is high. If it gets to 50%, then they're gonna qualify us as a special ed school. That's why we have paras, we have intensive, folks working with these kiddos. You look at the scores, they're not the greatest, but they're improving. They're not 70%. But they're showing growth. And if you look back, I know a lot of people want to blame it on COVID. Well, we lost a lot during those 2 years. And kids are just starting to get back in the groove. But it takes a lot of work, takes dedication, and our teachers are doing that job. And now I'm on the school board, probably the next, I've been here 3 years now, maybe 4. So I see the other side. I really want to be on the other side to be teaching these kiddos. But I hear you, and I know I've pledged a lot to Angela to get some of those homeschoolers back in this school. Why are they not coming to our school? And a lot of parents want to have their kids at home. But I can see this school growing as a private school someday. If it's not a public school, or you have all these resources coming into the school. We need kiddos, we need housing, there's a lot of factors. And we're not the only town that's faced with this, there's a lot.
Does the town still own this building? I know that the SU sold it to the town. Does the town still own?
We own the building, the town owns the building. There's a lot of things that are gonna have to happen if the school closes. What happens to this building? There's a lot of regulations that the town's gonna have to go through. So. Yeah.
So I just want to clear something up. I feel kind of like with what I've said, probably gonna be labeled as a person that wants to see the school closed. And in my heart, I don't want to see the school closed. All right, we moved here 13 years ago. And we never saw the town of Grafton. We lived towards the Chester end of Grafton. We closed on our house. And it was when we were moving stuff in, let's see what the town's like. And I was blown away by this town. It looked like a postcard. Let's see where the school is. We had no kid yet. Wow, this is a great little school. Look at the playground. Look at the setting. This is gonna be a great place to be. Try to keep my thoughts organized here. You said about 20 years ago you graduated from the school, right?
2006.
Okay. I don't doubt that you had a wonderful education here at all. We've had the privilege of knowing many parents in the community that also went to school here with our child. And I will challenge you to find one parent who had a child here, pick a number, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, whatever, and has a younger child in this school. We were never around for the old days. We never saw the great Grafton School. Okay, not one parent has had a positive thing to say to us in confidence, in private, about what's going on in the school. And I think to try to veil the words on 13 kids going to homeschool, there's other kids that are going to other schools that it's a burden. But there seems to be no reaching out, no why. This should be about a private school result here. I went to a school in southern tier New York in a very poverty-stricken area where I was bused into Newark Central Schools. And I had 28 to 33 kids in every one of my classes, one 60-year-old teacher, my whole school career. and I got a great education. With the ratios we're talking here, I would expect a lot more. And didn't happen. It didn't happen. So I don't want to see the school close. But people had to make decisions to look for a better option. I want to see the school fixed. But there doesn't really seem to be a lot of interest in that.
I appreciate what you're saying, and I think there's a lot of parents out there that haven't come to our meetings. They're afraid to talk, afraid to let us know what's going on, if there's a concern. My son, went to kindergarten here, there was 5 kiddos. It was a 4-room schoolhouse here. He then went first to 2nd grade. And unfortunately had to move due to family circumstances, and we did come back. He had 4th grade here, 3rd and 4th, and then 5th and 6th in a trailer, because they were building a new school to house about 100 plus students. My son graduated from Purdue and Northeastern. Great education here at Grafton. He was hyperactive, on medication, calm him down, but he survived. He loved his school. He got into all the sports too, with basketball and baseball.
Have a hand up back there too.
Yes.
I'm just curious, I brought this up last year as well. Housing seems to be an issue in this town. There is no affordable housing. I'm with the few 30-year-olds who live in this town because we can't afford to live here. Is there committees or people looking at the amount of Airbnbs in this town, the amount of second homes? We're not going to get kids if there's nowhere for these families to live. And I know there are regulations. I went to the Rural Schools Alliance up at the State House a couple weeks ago and was talking to senators, and Grafton is on their minds. They're talking about it up there. They're asking me about it because they knew I lived here. And they said, is your town talking about regulations about the amount of Airbnbs that can be in their first full-time home?
Well, the select board just passed a
Short-term rental.
short-term rental ordinance.
It doesn't prohibit short-term rentals, though, it's a registry.
No, there was a reason why we wanted to have this policy, this ordinance in place to keep track of the Airbnbs and who was managing them. We've not had very many complaints, but we've passed it just our last meeting. A lot of work was put into that. We'd like to control it as best we can, but we can't control it. But at least we know who's having the homes there that are rented. I know I pleaded last year at town meeting that if you're gonna rent your home, do the long term so we could have families and children here. Again, it's just not Grafton, it's happening all over the state. With the shortage of housing. There's a lot of land, open land, you see it, but nobody wants to give up that land to have any housing. And now we're faced with, Act 250 and tier 1, 2, and 3, and Act 181 with regulations of who builds, where you build, and what happens. So it's a lot happening with the housing, and I hear your plea.
Kathy, are there currently 50 STRs in town?
No.
No,
No.
35.
22. There's for your information in the back, there are towns that have done ordinances, including like Stowe. I encourage you to look into those and bring those before your select board.
We looked at a lot of towns. And it's interesting to see some of the ski area towns where they have multiple hundreds of Airbnbs with no regulations, no ordinances, no policies.
So What I'm hearing is that nobody really wants to close the school. Some people are feeling like there's not much else that can be done because of the cost. And I'm hearing that the electric gets to make that decision. So I'm wondering, there could be a group as a community that needs to discuss that. And look, there's a lot to talk about, a lot to think about, a lot to look at. Beyond just the school board running the school, it's a pretty big decision. And I think a lot of people have a lot of interesting things to say about it. Some of the things I'm wondering about is you're talking about transportation. Well, would they all even have to go to the same school? Would they be offered a choice, or would they all have to go to the same school? Is there a nearby school that has room? What would it cost to send them to other schools as opposed to keeping them home? So there's a lot to think about. What could be done to reduce the cost if they stay here? I know you've worked on that some. But are there things, like I just heard that you can only have 2 grades. I did retire that long ago, and in my last 9 years, twice, I had 3 grades. Let me tell you, I wasn't into it at first, but it worked out both times and went really well. In the past, we had teaching principals. Is that not allowed anymore? You have a small group. Is there some way to make that work? I just want to say scores don't tell the whole story with testing. There's a lot of things that affect scores. Sometimes they just had a really bad night the night before. Some kids don't test well. Some of the tests are really strange. I'm telling you, for a kid to do, they're not all kid friendly. A lot of things to really think about. Some kids don't come to school ready to learn. They're coming from something at home that they can't get their mind on learn. It's all you can do to get them to even be there to function and participate. Personally, I think schools could spend a lot more money on counseling and social work, because if the kids aren't ready to learn, there's only so much you can do. One of the things, somebody said they don't hear anything good about the school anymore, and I do know, I've heard a lot since COVID, when the school door is locked, a lot of people don't feel welcome here. And I know there was some community forums, I wished I had taken part then, I had a lot going on, I didn't. But I feel like people never felt heard when they had those forums. School is and can be, should say can be the heart of the community. And I don't think people are feeling that right now. What can we do so that they do feel that way? Because if you want people to support the school, you have to make them feel that the school is valuable. One way is for feeling the kids are getting a good education for their money, and another way is helping them feel like this building is important to them. People used to come in and volunteer a lot. There's a lot of different events here. So I just think there's a lot that could happen, but I think it's beyond just the school board on top of everything else you have to do. And I think to get a group to talk about, what could the future of the school be? What are the options?
Thank you.
I agree.
I'd be happy to facilitate a study group or whatever we want to call it, to make a recommendation to the board or to the electorate around the school. I also just got sent numbers. So as far as what we have tracked and the information we have 3 students who are attending private schools.
Wow. For myself, I wasn't gonna talk. My name is Al Sands. My name is Al Sands. When I came to town over 50 years ago, there was 2 little league teams. And we had enough players for both teams just in Grafton. I was on the school board when we built this school. The school was built, the prediction of, or the numbers that we were given from supervisor union, the growth that we were having in town at that time, said that we were going to 120 students, and the building was built for 120. Just after the school was built, Unified Data closed and the cheese plant moved to Brattleboro. That was 2 huge hits, Grafton, that a lot of young families left Grafton and didn't come back. Of course, kids went with them.
we have 50% of the homes in Grafton that are second homes. When I'm on the select board, people are saying, oh, that's great, because, all those people are paying taxes, but they're not sending their school to kids, they're sending their kids to school. But to really look at the issue in town, have to look at the issue other than just the school and just the select board. Because one affects the other. And if you want to do planning and look at opportunities, it all has to work together, and people don't think about how they're all interrelated, but we've seen a lot of changes in over 50 years, and some good, some not so good, but I miss seeing all the kids in town.
Anybody else have any questions or comments they'd like to make? Okay, what do we do now?
Basically, it's on to the, whatever the agenda is, move on.
Is there any information on the River Valley Tech Center? Nope, nope. Review and discuss town articles, so that means I give it over to the select board.
That's correct. We're done.
Johnson, thank you for your comments.
No, no. 2012. Oh, was that one there? Yeah. My grandma's there. That same.
There, Kathy's up there. Yeah, that's in the agenda. You want to say here? Yeah. Please.
Yeah, I'll sit there. Yeah.
Is there an agenda?
If it's review articles, it's all it says, not us. That's okay. It's not a separate.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, Kat.
So I'll call the meeting, our pre-town meeting to order here at the Grafton School. Our select board had a very busy year. I want to thank all our members of our board, John and Steve and Anna and Buzz. You know, we work as a team, and without them, you know, makes the job really hard. But I thank them for all their work, along with our town administrator, Morgan, and Kim and Michelle.
There's a lot that happens with the select board. I mean, we meet every 2 weeks, but there's a lot of stuff that you don't know about. There's meetings, we have committees. We're always going to other workshops. So there's a lot behind the scenes. And we accomplished a lot this year. We welcome Buzz Fisher on the board. We've also have thanked Joe Collier for his years of service. We have a new foreman, highway foreman. I don't know if he's here tonight, Travis Mann. We have a highway crew that's working together, and you can see the difference with our roads and the conditions. And we've had quite a winter, so, they're doing a really good job. We have a budget, and again, I want to thank Kim for all her work on it, and Michelle and the board. The budget is up probably about 3%, 3.2%. A lot of it's been line items. Some of the items have increased, like the health insurance, fuel costs. The listers had to buy a computer system, and that kind of raised the budget a little bit. But I think it's pretty frugal. And we have the articles and we can go over them, but I'm just gonna open it up to questions. If you have any questions, particularly in any of the items on the budget. Or the articles that are gonna be voted on town meeting day. Any questions? Cynthia?
Well, my question, I don't know, people like it, but everybody has a budget, but the library doesn't have a budget. You know, they tell us what they spent, but they don't tell us what they're good, but they want a budget, so how do we know that they need $12,000? There's somebody here that's on the board.
Michelle could answer that.
You know what?
I know Michelle.
Michelle is the librarian, somebody on the board that.
Cynthia, if you've been select board meeting, we made our presentation, we gave them a program, a budget. We do have,
But you don't put it in the town report. It needs to be in the town report.
our budget is in the town's report.
No, that's not budget, that's very expensive.
Well, we've
And you're-
given you, well, we've always given you what we've always been required. Well, we come to the select board, we give them, I'm sorry, you interrupted me, you asked me a question. So when we come to the select board, we present a pro forma budget. We put that financial report based on what Louise Park does a million years ago, and nobody's ever told us to get anything different. If you would like something different for the town report, we would be happy to give it to you. I've got the pro forma budget sitting right on the computer. But if you'd like to come to the library and see it, you could.
But it needs to be in the town report. We're
Or
already,
if you the town clerk for many years when we submitted it, you could have let us know that. We would have been happy to do that, and we will take that into consideration.
What else is?
Cynthia, when we had the budget meetings, each of the groups that, like the capital budget meeting and what they wanted the town to give them, they gave a detailed report. And I guess I assumed it was in here too, but if that's something that we can do next year, we'll do it. But it was a detailed report that they had. Any other comments or questions? the board members want to say anything about our, budget or the articles? Sounds set?
Good. So we review them.
Sure. So for town meeting, we will meet, March 3rd at 10 here at school. The voting happens at 9 o'clock, ends at 7. Article 1, shall the town of Grafton elect all municipal officers by Australian ballot? Voting shall take place again, March 3rd, 2026, 9 to 7 p.m. Article 2, shall the town of Grafton receive and accept the auditor's report? Article 3, shall the town of Grafton authorize the select board to borrow money respectively if necessary for the current expenses in anticipation of collected taxes? Article 4, shall the town of Grafton raise $725,840 for the maintenance of the highway and bridges? And if you look at our budget for the highways, it's actually down this year. Article 4, shall the town of Grafton raise $725,840 for the maintenance of the highways and bridges? Article 5, shall the town of Grafton raise $420,772 for the select board's budget? Article 6, shall the town of Grafton raise $5,050 for the Grafton Rescue for operating expenses? Article 7, shall the town of Grafton raise $9,000 for the ambulance service? And that's with Golden Cross. Article 8, shall the town of Grafton raise $29,950 for the Grafton Firefighters Association and operating expenses? I don't know if Robbie's here tonight. Yeah, if you have any questions about the fireman's budget.
He's in the back.
Robbie, did you want to say anything about that article?
Anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thanks. Article 9, shall the town of Grafton raise $18,500 for the Grafton Fire Truck Fund? Article 10, shall the Grafton town approve expenditures of any grant monies awarded for purposes named in such the grant or grants for fiscal year 26-27. Article 11 states several of humanitarian expenses. They're all listed there. Article 12, shall the Grafton raise $200,000 for capital budget, $139,500 for highway and structures, $3,500 for the computer software program, $42,000 for the town hall requirements fund, and $15,000 for the fire hydrant fund. Article 13, shall the town of Grafton pay its property taxes to the treasurer on quarterly installments, which will be due August 17th, November 16th, February 16th, May 17th, with no postmarks accepted. Article 14, shall the town of Grafton levy an interest charge of all delinquent taxes on real and personal property of 1% per month or fraction thereof from the date due of each installment for the first 3 months and 1.5% per month or fraction thereof every month thereafter, as provided by section 32 BSA. And the last article, to transact any other non-binding business that may legally come before the town meeting. So those are the articles. We have your booklet of all the budgets. And I know they'll have questions on town meeting. So if there's no questions, then we're gonna go move to candidates forum. We have some candidates that are interested in becoming select board members. Yes.
But in 30 seconds, I would just like to thank Jay Majowski. He's not going to run again. He's on our board, I think, for 6 years or maybe more. So Jay is running again, and Don Alexander is running, but we just wanted to acknowledge all the hard work AJ has done over this year's time. He's not here, he's happens other than
And I'd like to thank Steve Sargent for his select board as a member. He did his term and he's decided not to resume the term, but thank you, Steve, for all your work.
Welcome, thank you.
You guys have anything to say? That's it?
Yeah.
So if the candidates want to come up, we'll move back and we'll have you speak to why you'd like to be a select board member. And then there'll be some questions from the audience. Thank you.
And I'll thank you. That was the shortest meeting I've had with these questions in one time.
So the candidates can come up and please use the microphones. They can hear you.
You were a candidate. Some people.
Everybody have a mic?
We will now.
Juan, John, do you want to start?
Sure.
My name is John Gregory, and I am running for the 3-year select board. I'd just like to read a couple paragraphs to you, and if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. Within the last approximately 40 years, I have served on the select board for 26 years. I could constantly work with the town office staff and the highway department, monitoring the town budget, working on infrastructure projects, and answering questions about the day-to-day operations. I have worked on the floods of the 96 Irene, 2011, 2021, and 2023. That work began with documenting damage, and I worked all the way through until the town received reimbursement. I plan to continue focusing on working with the select board to oversee the town budget, supporting the highway department on culvert and road maintenance projects, and other various services that the town offers. Thank you.
Go down the line.
Go down the water.
My name is Peter Richardson, and live on Chester Road. Top of the hill, red house, controversial fence. We moved to Grafton almost 2 years ago. So we are relative newcomers. But I think we as my wife Nancy and me have enough time to absorb a fair amount of why we moved here, and it's all positive. We're excited about that. We've landed in a place that's our feeling is, do we have one more adventure in us in Vermont? We are not new to Vermont. We have lived here for 30 years. We moved to Charlotte from Boston. And the motivation was to, at that time in our lives, we were still very active professionally. We wanted to move to a place that was more accommodating in terms of just a place to live that was positive. We had both lived in large cities, and worked there, and enjoyed that, but time for a change had presented itself. Previous to that move, we'd also owned an old farm in the Northeast Kingdom. Lunenburg, Vermont was a place that I had discovered with some friends, and it provided an anchor for me, and it provided an insight for a remote rural Vermont that fit very nicely. I made good friends. I learned a lot about the culture and appreciated it. And that was a draw that we built on when we moved to Chittenden County. Different circumstance, still Vermont, and a place that we appreciated a lot. So we're glad to be here. I know a fair amount of you, which is significant, and there are names that have come up in the conversation tonight, which was stimulating about how to go about trying to nurture and save the school. The background that I had outlined in the letter that I wrote when we got published in the Grafton News. I'll repeat it very quickly. My personal experience began with local government, municipal government. I worked with big city mayors in both Boston and San Francisco, moved to Washington, D.C., started a consulting firm, moved away from the municipal, pretty broad brush municipal basis, and began to focus on affordable housing. In particular, how to combine the resources and energy of local communities with complex real estate transactions that involve state money, that involve private money, that involve foundation money, philanthropic donors. And it was there was hardly a deal that got done that didn't have at least 10 or a dozen sources of income in it. The fact that affordable housing was mentioned in the discussion tonight, and the impact that it might have in Grafton was stimulating. It was good to hear. Part of what I did, and I'm sorry to take up so much time, was to run a company called Housing Vermont. Housing Vermont is a statewide nonprofit that collaborated with local community organizations to build affordable housing, primarily rental housing. And even in Windham County, we did a small deal. This was some time ago in Brattleboro. I think most people here will have driven by in Bellows Falls, the building that we rehabilitated on Canal Street, which was specially designated for artists, both residential and commercial space. So we got way down here in southeast Vermont. I want to make sure that what would I bring to the select board? Enthusiasm for sure, the governance experience, public service commitment, knowledge and familiarity, not current with who's running things in Montpelier, but certainly comfort in the willingness to get re-involved at the state level as needed. I have spent a fair amount of time in the past couple of weeks with this dedication to become to seek a seat on the select board came up somewhat suddenly. But I spent time in conversation, interview with each of the incumbent select board members, with senior staff. Kim Record was generous with her time and instruction, trying to help me understand how the systems work here. Travis Mann, I went and spent some time with him. Also longtime volunteers like Hardy Merrill, walked through the capital budgeting process. So this helped try to clarify what was going on. And got introduced to some of the issues of concern: taxes, how do you deliver services that people demand, and yet still be able to control expenses. The school, got educated tonight about some of the subtlety and some of the challenges of the school. Whole Act 250 debate, which is still forming, and certainly will have an impact in town. Short-term rentals and what that means in terms of second home ownership, and the obstacles to expanding opportunities for permanent residents. So I'll stop there. Thank you, and I'll take on questions if I can.
Hi, my name is Joe Polio. I live on Middletown Road, and I'm back. I served as select board for over 20 years. I've been a resident in Vermont for almost 40 years with a short stint to Florida, and came back to Grafton, which is a place which I just love. I served, when I first came up here, I served as an auditor. Then I served on the planning commission. Then I served as selectman, and presently I serve on the capital budget committee and the DRB board. I have no agenda except to make sure that Grafton stays Grafton. It's a great little town. It's a place that we all love here. I don't like regulations. I don't want to see zoning. I don't want to see us regulate ourselves like a lot of the towns are now doing. And I don't know how many of you people follow, but Londonderry, they passed all these regulations that you can't do this, you can't do that. And that's not a place that I want to be in. I came here because I don't like regulation. I want to have a place that's simple. You have nice friends and you can enjoy it. I lived in Florida for about 7 years full time. And I had never lived under the regulation with zoning and all the hoops that you have to go for. We built a house there. It was absolutely horrendous, and I then never want to see that happen here in Vermont. So I'm back. I have experience. I've served with John. John and I have served almost, well, he's a few more years than I did. I've been through the floods. I've been the chair of the board for probably 11 or 12 years of my 20 years. And I'm looking for your vote, and I will continue to do what I have done in the past. I love Grafton. I have a record. People know of me. And that's it. Thank you. And you can ask. I was going to say you can ask questions.
Hi, I'm Hannah Keegan, for those of you who have not met me. And I'm on the select board now, but I'm probably being introduced here for the first time. And I'll sort of explain that as I go along. So my husband, Steve, and I moved here to Grafton in October of 2020. It's about 5.5 years ago after raising our children in Massachusetts. And coincidentally, I grew up in Grafton, Massachusetts. So this move seemed like a return to the Grafton of my youth. It looks a lot like the Grafton of my youth, of dirt roads, beautiful historic buildings and dairy farms. Grafton of my youth has changed a lot. Anyway, we moved at the beginning of COVID, so it wasn't until after a year or so of seeing masked faces that everyone started to emerge and the town returned to a more normal rhythm. But what Steve and I saw was very different from Grafton, Massachusetts, or the other small town where we raised our kids, we quickly saw a level of volunteerism and involvement by the people of Grafton, Vermont that is truly unusual. The large number of residents involved in our town in so many different ways, preserving history and open spaces, helping our students, enjoying community by getting together for dinners at the chapel or for sugar on snow, supporting essential fire and rescue services, to mention just a few. I was reminded of this again just the other night at the inn when I overheard two people planning another meeting for this year's town picnic. It's underway, don't worry. They have a band. Anyway, I was amazed when we first discovered this, and I continue to be all the time. So given all that, it wasn't much of a leap for me to say yes when asked if I'd consider running for the vacant select board seat 20 months ago, after Seth Patrick moved out of town. I had some time to give. I've taught American history and government for the past 30 years and continue to teach, tutor, and consult on a part-time basis. So I saw this as my chance to help out, like all of us do. So that's exactly how I view my role on the select board. It's my opportunity to help out and chip in, whether with highway, infrastructure, personnel, or other local issues, or with larger state-generated concerns like the current Act 181 that's coming up next month. I'm here to listen to you, the townspeople, and to gain consensus to help guide policy. I want to make sure your tax monies are carefully considered when the necessary costs for running a town come up. And I'm here to learn much, much more about the processes involved. I wouldn't have survived so far without the help of Morgan, Kim, Michelle, and the rest of the board. So I'm ready to continue for another 2 years. I'm ready to continue to work for you guys and would love to hear more from you, the townspeople, as we go forward. And I hope you vote for me on March 3rd. Thank you. Question.
Sorry, and I kind of lost my voice a little bit, but, so Tom, or Peter is your name, right? So you talked a lot about low income housing and housing units and stuff, and with the rules that the select board just passed about Airbnbs and second homes and whatnot, I'd like to hear all four of your take on how you truly feel about that. Because when I ran for select board 2 years ago with Steve, one of the questions that a resident from here in town called me and asked me was, what was my agenda? I didn't have an agenda. And I'm just wondering, with, you know, the shortages on housing and the concerns about the school, and now these new rules coming down on what second homeowners can and can't do with their own property. I'm wondering what your take is on that.
Okay, I'm gonna assume that that question was addressed to all of us.
Oh, I'd like to hear everyone.
So would I. This is gonna sound a little bit like a dodge, but I don't have an agenda about that issue either. These are serious points that require a lot more airing, a lot more consideration amongst the leadership and the people who are active in the town. I have been impressed by the way the select board has managed the conversations that I've overheard, which is, as Kathy mentioned, collaborative. I mean, there are different ideas or different thoughts, but somehow the chemistry of the group is, let's get together and address issues. And I think that this one needs to fall into that. I don't have an answer to what do you do when you have half of the residences in town that are owned by other people who don't live here. That's a tough one, and it needs a lot more thought than off the top of my head.
But how, I guess you didn't really, you said you were gonna dodge it. How do you feel about it? Your neighbor it's a second homeowner and they rent it out Airbnb. Is it really your concern what they do if they have, you know, what they do? They pay their taxes, they pay their electricity. they bought the house, they have the right to tear it down and build a new one if they want to, and it could be the ugliest monstrosity ever. But you're still their neighbor.
Yes, I would answer that in two ways. One, if they are managing their house so it doesn't disturb my enjoyment of my house, that's a step, that's a positive step.
Okay.
If there is a need and a desire for housing that is going to attract full-time residency in town and revitalize places like the school, then some effort needs to be put into creating those opportunities. And, you know, where that goes and how that's formed and how that evolves is something that I'm not going to jump into in this conversation.
Okay, I just have one more comment. So my husband and I have been married for almost 30 years. We had 2 children who we raised here, when we were younger and we came to these select board meetings and these town meetings, the older generation of this town didn't want young families coming here. It cost them too much because of this. So I don't know if we create more housing, you know, affordable housing for people, I don't think if you build it, they're gonna come.
I'll jump in, not necessarily with that question, and that I couldn't possibly venture down the affordable housing road either. I did pick up the ordinance, the short-term rental ordinance existed in the draft form before I got on the board. And I agreed to finish the job. And just for clarity, by and large, all the feedback that I got, and I wanted to gain consensus, which is something that I believe is absolutely essential to creating good policy. But virtually all the feedback I got from both sides of the issue, those that don't have an interest in short-term rentals and those that do, were that it would not be bad to get a handle on what actually is out there. We've got 2 very different situations. We have part-time homeowners, and then we have a small amount of homeowners, both full and part-time, that may like to rent out a portion of their house. The purpose of the ordinance is not to restrict in one way or the other. First of all, so those part-timers were not really, that's not really part of the issue. The purpose of the ordinance is to get a handle on exactly what's out there and to ensure the safety of occupants and the well-being of our citizens and things like that. Right now, the short-term rental market is very slow, I guess is the word for it. There are very many empty short-term rentals. Interestingly enough, after 2 years of this process, it's like, oh, well, I don't even know if this is worth, I mean, it's not much. The ordinance is not designed to restrict anyone from doing anything that they think they can do and should want to do with their house. I agree. I don't believe anyone should tell me that I can't rent a room in my home or rent my home for a certain amount of time, as long as I abide by the rules. And that's exactly what that was for. And that's basically the feedback I got. I wish I got more feedback. There was surprisingly little comments. The ordinance, by the way, was just passed. There's 60 days remaining for anyone to contest it in the proper process. So it's not completely a done deal yet. But all it does is it puts a cap. It makes sure there are real people behind the rentals. It makes sure that there is a place for all the safety, noise, parking, all those guidelines are attested to. Those are state guidelines. We created no new guidelines other than those that impact us at the local level from our previous ordinances. So there's nothing different there. So that's the situation now. But yeah, I actually agree. I will say that. I think we buy our homes, and by and large, you can do what you want with your home.
Yeah, we also worked trying to get a committee together before we put a vote to the
Right.
ordinance. We didn't get any funding.
Crickets.
We had a lot of meetings, people came and they told me what. You know, they might have, maybe they don't live in Grafton, but they live far away and they have, what their state's doing. So a lot of research went into it, but we couldn't get people to come in to, or a committee to get developed, but basically. Is Morgan and Anna and the board working on it.
And lots, I got a lot of feedback through email and things like that, which was great. Al has a question here.
Can I make a suggestion to select board as well as the public? You need to define affordable housing. I think if I ask somebody to write down what's affordable housing, you're gonna get a lot of different ideas, and to a lot of people, affordable housing is low income housing, it's some people look at it as undesirable. To me, affordable housing could also be a young working family can afford to live there and raise the family. So I don't think we should stereotype affordable housing as undesirable.
Okay, when I came here 40 years ago, there were no such thing as short-term rentals, but there was a lot of second homeowners. And the second homeowners were, although not voting members of the town, but a lot of the second homeowners participated in certain things. Some were members of the Historical Society, they attended other functions and whatever. And over the years, the second homeowner became a permanent resident in many cases. I'm not opposed to the short-term rentals, but the short-term rentals do not do the same thing as a person who has a home for a vacation home or a getaway home. Because that person is here for a week or 2 days or 5 days and comes back and may never come back again. So you lose that sense of community from the second homeowner to actually help or participated in the town functions over the years. But as far as anybody, they can do whatever they want with their houses. That's not it's not my thing. But affordable housing has always been talked about here. And I agree with Alan Sands. To me, if affordable housing is for somebody who has a young family working and they cannot afford a $500,000 or $600,000 house, but can afford something where they can get a decent mortgage and become part of the community. And I'm a 40-year-old person here, 40 years old in Grafton. I've never heard anybody say that they didn't want to have young kids here. I think young kids are great. I think young kids make a community. And without young kids, you don't have a community.
Well, I'd just like to make a couple comments. I'm the lone one that voted against that ordinance. And I'll tell you why. For the last 3 years, we've had 3 complaints on the Airbnbs. One of them was a fire they had on the back lawn, the past 10 o'clock. The other complaint was a car was parked on the street outside, because there wasn't room in the parking lot. And then there was a bag of garbage on Pleasant Street. To me, that wasn't enough reason to adopt an ordinance on the Airbnbs. We've had no complaints. Somebody that should adopt an ordinance is the town of Ludlow. They have over 250 of those, and they have no ordinance whatsoever. And they haven't had any complaints. We haven't had any here, so it'll come eventually, but I don't think we have to push an ordinance in that we've had no complaints on.
Your point is extremely well taken, and it also discloses some comedy in this panel. Everybody, I think, would agree that affordable does not mean the low-income housing giant. No, what we're talking about is a range of affordability, and that's the kind of vitality of this community. It seems aligned to support.
Select board, I'd like to just say, Mary Hall, I sit on the high school board and the SU board, a few other things. We know that the lack of affordable housing, however you define it, is affecting employment. And so there are people who want to hire teachers and the hospital staff. And constantly we hear, I sit on the board, we talk about this family won't take the job because they can't find a place to live, even though we pay pretty great wages in those places. So it is a problem. It's a problem here, it's a problem in Brattleboro, it's a problem in Montpelier, it's a problem in Burlington, but it is a problem here. And if we want those employers, our school department and the hospital and Sonax of Bellows Falls, we need to find a place where we can grow as a community. It's something to remember that it affects hiring. Thank you.
I'd just like to say something that, you know, part of the problem with the affordable housing is the Act 250. It makes it very, very difficult to do anything. And I'm not on the board, so I don't know all about the new regulations. I haven't had a chance to, but I understand they're even more stringent or could be more stringent. So how can you have, in one minute, the governor says we need more affordable housing, but on the other side, the Act 250 people, they want to restrict it. They put more things in way that you can't do it. I'm very active in Grace Cottage, and Grace Cottage just went through their Act 250. And it took them well over a year, and they did not have one complaint. So they had what they call was I think it's it's an easy Act 250 because there's no complaints. They don't have to hear any hearings or whatever. 1 whole year in a hospital. So I'm in favor of having affordable housing, but I don't know how you can do it with the regulations that the states has.
Any other questions for the candidate? Or comments? Thank each of you, thank each of you for being here and. Now vote.
Yeah, go out and vote. You all need to vote.
What's that? Oh, yeah. Thank you, everybody.